Welcome back to the second part of Chapter 10 in Night of the Twisters. Before we can finish reading, thank you to our author, Ivy Ruckman, and to the publishing company, HarperCollins, for allowing us to make these videos. I wonder why the tornadoes happened to us, Arthur said, sitting there beside me. I mean, why didn't it hit Lincoln or Kearney or someplace in Iowa? Stacy leaned forward to brush the crumbs off her shirt front. All the time she had been watching the lady with the baby. Arthur scooted closer. You know what? He said. What? I answered absently. I had just finished my last cracker, and I was wondering how long it was going to take Stacy to go help with a crying baby. I was feeling sorry for the poor mother myself, and only halfway paying attention to what Arthur was saying, when Stacy sat her 7-Up down on the tray. I'll be back in a minute, she said. Hey, Arthur banged my leg until I returned to face him. Listen, Dan, this is important. Yeah? Oh, you know that bull roar I made? I nodded. You know what the Hopi Indians believe? My eyes were back on Stacy, and sure enough, the lady was letting her take the baby. Dan, what if I caused the tornado? He whispered in a hoarse voice. What are you talking about? The bull roar? The Hopi Indians. They wouldn't let their kids play with bull roars inside. Not in the spring leastways. You know that roaring sound that they make? I nodded. Well, that sound is supposed to bring on the whirlwinds, death and destruction and all of that. I knew about it. And I still swung that bull roar anyway. Remember your Aunt Goldie's place? It was ripped apart worse than anybody's. Arthur, bull roars don't cause tornadoes. He was a lot smarter than me. How could he even think that? Well, why us then? Grand Island, Nebraska, the all-American city. Why our neighborhood? There were tornadoes spinning down all over, I reminded him. He leaned back against the wall and pressed his lips together. I guess I was making him mad. I leaned back too, and I sucked on the edge of my 7-Up can. In spite of the heat in there, goosebumps had begun to finger up my scalp. Was it any different what I had been thinking? We both knew about tornadoes and storm cells and squall lines and all of that. Then why had I been thinking the same as Arthur? Only with me it wasn't some stupid bull roar. It was Ryan. It was all those times that I wished Ryan was out of existence. I had been sick of him from the day he was born. I squeezed my can flat with both hands, pushing the air out of my lungs at the same time. If anybody was being punished by a tornado, it was me. I was the one who had resented a helpless baby, my own flesh and blood. I wondered how I could have felt that way about him. Arthur, I spoke up, determined to straighten him out. That tornado wasn't anybody's fault. Don't you think I know that? But you just said. I know what I said. He got on his feet, grinning. Come on, let's pick out our spots before Stacy comes back. She's a real bed hog. Arthur took off his shoes and he settled himself at one end, stretching across the two cots. It took me longer, pulling off my waterlogged socks one at a time, and then rolling up my muddied bottoms of my jeans. I took my time inspecting my feet, which looked like prehistoric monsters. They were so wrinkled and gray. By the time I was ready to lay down, Arthur was breathing hard. It took him an all of 3 minutes to fall asleep. With Arthur unconscious beside me, I turned my head so that I could see what was going on in the big room. The men had propped open the door, and they were standing near the entrance, smoking and talking in low voices. The mother in the opposite bedroom unit was washing her kids with a cloth that looked like the cuff end of Stacy's t-shirt. And the girl, with the banged-up arm, laid on the sofa, very still, with her dark eyes open. I wondered if I'd ever seen her at Dodge Elementary, but I didn't think I had. Stacy was now playing peekaboo with the baby, hiding behind the overstuffed chair and then popping out with these little squeaky sounds that made the baby laugh. The baby's mother had her hands full trying to get the other ones to sleep. I pulled my knees up, trying to get comfortable, but no matter how I arranged myself, one cut or another one would stick to the plastic. I finally gave up and just closed my eyes. I couldn't think about my dad or grandpa or grandma. It just made me too nervous. I concentrated on Mom and Ryan instead, wondering what they would be doing in the big old store. Maybe the Kmart people had opened up the cafeteria and they were making pizzas for everyone. If I had a really crazy thought next, what if Kmart was doomed to be our summer home? That might not be too bad. I pictured the video games and the oversized toy department, the aisle of kitchen things that my mom always liked to look at. Kmart would be a lot more interesting place to live than Armory. Then I remembered the Armory had a basketball court and I couldn't decide which one would be better. I opened my eyes to check on Stacy. Why would she rather count some strange baby's toes than finish drinking her 7-Up? Wasn't she ever going to come back? I finally got up and I went to the bathroom. I splashed my face and arms and took a big drink and then watched as the water pressure fell off right before my eyes. The stream reduced to a trickle and then it stopped. I turned the faucet off and I waited. I tried it again, but nothing but drips. The water quit, I whispered to Stacy when I got back to the main room. The baby had fallen asleep in the big chair and Stacy was sitting on the floor patting its grubby-looking undershirt. She gave me a grim look, and she sent me to tell the other two mothers who thanked me for the bad news. After that, Stacy and I went back to our cell where she finished her drink. What does it mean when the pressure dies down like that? I asked. I don't know. I guess it means we're in trouble. More trouble. There was plenty of water outside. It was raining again, mixed with hail. It tapped sharply against our window and pelted the roof over our head. What was to keep those tornadoes from coming back and flattening the public safety center, the way that it had flattened our homes and all those big buildings on South Locust? I'll never be able to sleep, I told Stacy. Me neither, she said. But we gotta try. We laid down across the cot, facing each other in the half-dark, hardly a foot between us. Having her there made me feel much better, I have to admit. I figured I could spend my whole life lying that way next to Stacy and not be unhappy about it. My face is really a mess, huh? She said. I shook my head against the plastic. Even black and blue, she looked terrific to me. We closed our eyes, and when I opened mine again, Stacy was looking at me. Don't be worried, Danny. I can't help it. You know something? Mama quotes scripture when she gets upset. She says it's like taking a tranquilizer. I wish I knew some scripture, I said, which was only half true. Well, you know the Lord is my shepherd, don't you? Yeah, everybody knows that. Okay, so here, Dan, we have to hold hands. Anyway, that's how we do it at home. I felt kind of funny about Stacy holding my hand, which was all sweaty and hot, but then it didn't matter after all because hers was too. Now, like Mama says, you have to make a picture in your mind to go with every line that we say, or it won't work. Do you want to try it? I nodded. The Lord is my shepherd. She stopped there. Are you getting a picture? Yeah, I was. I was seeing a shepherd plain as anything. So what is he wearing? Sandals and a long robe. Does he have a cloth thing on his head? He does now. I described it for her. It was wheat colored with a red border design, something like the sweatband held it in place. Hey, great, Danny. Stacy squeezed my hand and smiled her weird smile. We went on through the green pastures and the still waters. I saw the lambs all soft and fluffy. I heard the bleat of their mothers. We hadn't come to the valley of the shadow of death, or my cup runneth over, when all the lights in the place went out. We sat up straight. Stacy rushed to the windows and jumped a few times. "They're off down there, too," she said. We automatically grabbed hands when we came back. I couldn't believe it, but hers had already turned cold. In the big room, one of the men struck a match. The light drew the parents together like a magnet. In the brief flickering, we could see the girl on the sofa was sitting up too. "Well, the auxiliary power's gone," one of the men said. "They must have blown the generator." "Dan," Stacy whispered, her voice suddenly had grown quivery. "This really scares me." "It doesn't scare me," I lied, right through my teeth. "It doesn't scare me at all." I held her hand tight, marveling that it was the same size as mine, and I squeezed my eyes shut against that terrifying dark. I started in again at the 23rd Psalm, only to myself this time. It's funny how that shepherd, who had sure enough had Jesus' face to start with, was starting to look more and more like my dad. The next thing I knew, I was being jolted awake by the thunder roar of helicopters going right over our head. That's the end of the 10th chapter. The next chapter is called The Early Morning. I believe we only have 2 chapters left. The Early Morning, and then the last chapter is called As Remembered 1 Year Later. Thank you guys for sticking with me through some of these rather long chapters that I can't quite fit into one video. I'm limited to 15 minutes for each video with the software that I'm using. So some of these chapters have had to be part 1 and part 2 in order to get through all of them. So thank you for sticking through all of it to hear how it goes. We have 2 chapters left. I look forward to seeing you guys again next time. Bye.